Alright, fellas. I'm back. It's Omarcomin coming at you once a motherfucking again with a Ninth Age Fantasy Battles Battle Report version 2.0 4500 point Gauntlet Edition. I've been dragging my heels on this one, and with good reason. I think by now the word is out that the king has fallen. We've finally taken an L, boys. And in fairly spectacular fashion. So uh, I didn't really want to make this battle report. It's pretty embarrassing. I didn't play all that well, and I think I don't particularly feel like I got outplayed. I feel like I let a lot of opportunities pass me by to seize the initiative and play with a bit more aggression, and it cost me. So I don't want to make too many excuses. This is more or less a learning opportunity to begin with. So we may get a little introspective here today, and look at maybe some options that I had and did not exercise, but in general, just a series of errors. I feel like this was a difficult matchup for me. Again, this is a Gauntlet edition. This is a team tournament game, so I actually chose to face this list. I had the option between this list, a mirror Dwarven Holds list played by Danrak, or an Infernal Dwarves list. And in my mind, the best matchups for me were going to be either this or the Infernal Dwarves, because I have a fair number of tools for dealing with this stuff. Unfortunately, in terms of fightiness, these orcs really have. There's really nothing in my army that can actually grind with them. I lose first round combats versus both the feral orcs and the iron orcs. So we did come up with a game plan. I'll get into all of that. Let's sort of just go through the motions here. So it's a game between Dwarven Holds, Orcs and Goblins. This is map 3, I think. Really rough map for me. We've got two impassables of ruins and a hill. Not great if you're a cannon boy. And the lists, on his side, he's got the GGI in the far left, tucked behind the ruins. He's got 20 goblins. I think it's 26 feral orc headbashers with a orc shaman in there. I believe that's the druid shaman. What does he have? I think he has cleansing wrath of God. No, he's got the one with wrath of God, whatever that is. Yeah, so he's got that. He's got the gargantula, a skewer. I think that's 20 odd iron orcs with that's the shamanism shaman there, I think, or vice versa. It's probably vice versa. Those have the grudge applied. We've got the other skewer, another 20 goblins in the forest, and then 15 iron orcs in the east. So my game plan, essentially, this list, he's bringing a whole lot of magic here. So he's got the school with the Wrath of God in it, and because I have a little dwarf brain, I can never remember what they are called. That's, of course, Thaumaturgy. So he's got that, and his spells for Thaumaturgy are, of course, Wrath of God, because he's playing against dwarves. I believe he also took Smite the Unbeliever, Cleansing Fire, maybe? I mean, Wrath of God is really the only important one, but it also Smite the Unbeliever. And then in Shamanism, he has the usual Shamanism complement. So he's got Swarm of Insects, Totemic Summon. I think he has 2 instances of Awaken the Beast, and then Hand of Heaven. So pretty magic heavy list. And on this map, I basically determined that if I had gotten the bottom side of the map, the very best I could possibly do would be something to the effect of a 10-10 or a 12-8, something in that range. Having top, I was a bit more confident, a little more room to breathe, a few more obvious firing lanes, and all of that good stuff. So I guess was fortunate to win the side roll, but I really blew it in my deployment. So you'll see uh, he has basically counter deployed me completely, dropping his monsters out of vision, and he's pretty much going to hang out in that southwest side of the map for most of the game with those two big Griblies. Um, the objective here is hold the center, so I do have a bit of an advantage in terms of scoring. He does have 1, 2, 3, 4 scoring units to my 13. But that said, as I mentioned earlier, there's very little I can run into any of his blocks that will either stand there or be able to win a grind. So I basically have to play a flank and spank game here, and that's going to be challenging in these tight kind of quarters. And yeah, so I actually forgot to take the first turn screenshot. I obviously started deployment. He counter deployed, eventually dropped the remainder of his army to get like I think a 3+ on the roll, and won the choice and forced me to begin. So not a great position to be in on hold the center. So I feel like you typically want to begin, or you want to be the second player, so that you can sneak in that extra scoring unit at the end of the game, or score on a given turn by doing the same thing. This is the end of Dwarven Hold's turn 1. It looks like I didn't do a whole lot of anything. No viable targets for the cannons. You may question the deployment here, particularly against someone running Wrath of God. But it's either get shit on by a comet or deal with swarm of insects throughout the game. So and the totem. So the intention here is to keep my cannons in the game as long as possible by preventing the totem from having its turn to charge on any of my cannons, and by preventing him from being able to swarm of insect my cannons off the table. I could have probably deployed my rangers better. That was a bit of a mistake. If I had put them about 5 or 6 inches more to the south, they would have had a turn 1 shooting target, and unfortunately they did not. I did not move them expecting my opponent to march. He decided instead to chill outside of 30 inches of range, so they had nothing to shoot at in their turn 1 or their turn 2. So that was pretty fun. We're jumping ahead here, so let's move on. And so you see my opponent doesn't move up a whole lot. I guess still trying to stay out of cannon arcs, moving up fairly passively. I think he's a bit concerned about the feral on his or not the feral, but the frenzy on his head bashers, so still stays pretty far back. As you know, with hold the center, you don't begin scoring until turn 2, so I guess he doesn't really feel any urgency to take control of the map. And I guess my posture for the moment doesn't really indicate that I'm ready to take control of the map. So he, in magic phase, manages to cast his totemic summon, which you see up in the northeast near those 9-man unit of warriors. I believe that's the only spell he cast successfully this phase. I let it through and devoured it, so he can no longer cast it. And then I believe his totemic summon used his breath weapon to kill 1 warrior. I believe one of the skewers, or I think both skewers, amounted to 1 dead Kingsguard in total, and they chose not to fire on the Whole Guardians because the Whole Guardians are at -1 to hit. That's pretty much it for his turn 1. So again, just really, really passive, and I should have kind of seized on this opportunity. In the east, there's a little bit of an interesting kind of positioning game going on. I can't really move forward with the whole Guardians, or I end up in a grind with the Iron Orcs. I don't want to give them a charge. And I can't really move up too aggressively with the Warriors or the Kingsguard, or that unit of Iron Orcs will just turn their flank. The intention here is that I will have my miners coming on the next turn, and on that turn I'll be able to move very aggressively on that eastern flank, move up my whole Guardians, bring in my miners, and then he's pretty much pinched in that eastern side of the map with nowhere to go. So that's the play I'm hoping for, relying on a 3-up roll, and we'll just have to see how that goes. Well, no surprise, the miners don't arrive. The whole Guardians move forward just a little tiny bit to be able to do their complete 10-inch march, and or to stay out of his reliable charge threat range. And in terms of other movement, with the threat of totemic summon out of the way, my little dart of warriors in the west is able to move. The ones in the east did turn to face in case the cannons weren't able to get their job done and kill that totem. And that's pretty much it. I think here was really my opportunity to get aggressive, to split his force. I think what I should have done is in the west, redirect his savage orcs, and then basically just pile into him in the east of that rock. He would be able to get support from his Gargantula in a pretty big hurry, but I do think the 2 units of Kingsguard would have been sufficient to deal with the goblins and the Iron Orcs in that side. His general is in that Iron Orc unit, as well as his BSB. It's a pretty beefy bit of points right there. But of course, what holds me up here is the fact that my miners didn't arrive. So the plan I had in the east essentially falls apart on that 3+ roll. So if the miners had arrived, I could have placed them outside of the Iron Orc arc. They could shoot their pistols, which are nice at an AP2 against those 3-up armor boys, and then I can start moving very aggressively with the whole Guardians. If he charges me, I'll have a flank or a rear on him, and if he doesn't, then I will have a combo charge in the following turn. Best laid plans. Magic, I get a couple things that don't really matter. Shooting, my cannons have nothing to shoot at. I had to march or move my rangers forward so they could at least fire their crossbows. So yeah, nothing's really going according to plan here, and we'll move on to the Orcs and Goblins turn 2. So here you see things start to open up a little bit. In the west, he declared a charge with his Savage Orcs, I believe, on the unit of warriors in the center, which fled. I believe only fled after it looks like the goblins declared a charge on the 10-man unit of warriors that were in front of the Kingsguard in the east, and they fled. The Iron Orcs also charged the center unit of warriors, who fled, and then he chose to try to redirect at the Kingsguard. The goblins failed their redirect, and I believe the feral orcs also had a fail charge as a result of the fleeing unit of warriors. So they've moved up just a little bit here. Not enough to have any viable counter charges, which is a bit of a pity. And same in the center. So if those Iron Orcs had come forward 6 inches, I might potentially have had an opportunity at some long counter charges. But as luck would have it, I think he only moved 2 inches. So too bad. He did not war cry for those long charges. Both were 15s, I think. So he needed 11s or something like that for both of them. It was I don't really understand. I guess the intention was if he made them, it's a big deal for him. But if he fails them, there's no real harm done. So I guess a wise play on his part. I don't think he did much of anything else. Shooting, maybe he killed something. He might have got a web launcher shot. I don't think anything else here matters. Let's move on. Right, so in my turn, I rally both units of warriors, declare no charges. You'll see my miners arrived 1 turn late, so that's not too bad. I'm feeling pretty good about that, and that we're going to win the East. So yeah, that's a turn for the better. I did score in the last turn, so you see in the top right the score is now 1-0. He's showing no real urgency to get within scoring range, so I'm feeling pretty good about the objective at this point. I declare no charges, obviously, and in the east what I've done here is I've redirected his Savage Orcs. That's a front charge actually, so they'll charge kind of into that no man's land in between between 2 waiting units of Kingsguard. He has some chaffing and countercharging opportunities in the far east, but that center unit of warriors, if they manage to get a flank charge on those Savage Orcs, that would be pretty devastating to him. And in fact, I think between a flank charge from those warriors and a front charge from the spears, they should do okay against those feral orcs. The nightmare, of course, is that if he overruns with those feral orcs into the spear unit, I could be in a really bad way. There is no support available currently for those spear orc or the spear dwarves, so that overrun would essentially have won him the game. It's pretty far. My teammates and I disagree. I thought it was a 10. It was a 10, and they said it was a 9. Either way, it's not a guarantee. So, if he war cries, he would have had swift stride, but not great. It was not a great position. I should have been more aggressive. I think I could have moved the Kingsguard past the charge arc of the ferals, in which case all those Kingsguard are really dealing with is 20 goblins and the GGI. It's no safe task for them, but at least they would have a chance, and I really need to tie that unit up so that to get some freedom for movement in the west. But again, I'm not really feeling the urgency at this point of the game. Still a bit timid, like his charge threats are still very real. So yeah, the only thing I think I'm feeling good about at this point in the game is the east with the whole Guardians and the Miners. That's basically a dead unit of Iron Orcs and a roughly 300 point swing in my direction, so that's nice. Yeah, not much else to talk about. Let's go on to his turn 3. Orcs and Goblins turn 3. He declares a charge with his Savage Orcs, and I hold with the Warriors, giving him that potential overrun. I don't believe he charged anything else. I think he just marched to get within 6 of the center with his Iron Orc unit. And it looks like he charged with his Iron Orcs at my whole Guardians. That cannot be right. Oh yeah, sorry. This is between shooting and the combat with the whole Guardians. There are just 6 of those Iron Orcs left. I assume the Miners did about... I guess they only did 2. The Miners did 2 wounds. And the whole Guardians did the remainder. Elsewhere in his turn, he does this chaff thing with the Goblins, and... I don't know. I fucking hate this shit. If you do this conga stuff, I wish you wouldn't. I just think it's so stupid. but there it is. Okay. Um, so he does that conga thing with the Kingsguard. So the Kingsguard can't charge into his Spear Boy or his Feral Orcs. I do have some options for charges, um, and he's sort of chaffed for his troubles as well. So yeah, Magic. I don't think he does too much of anything. It looks like he got Awaken the Beast in on the Ferals. And that's it. I should mention that I did get -1 to wound in the whole Guardians on my turn, so that if he charged, he'd be basically res 6. So that is why I was pretty confident over there. He does manage to kill one model, though, which I was a little bit surprised about. But looks like it for this turn. So one important thing I forgot or neglected to mention that happened in the last round's Magic phase is that my opponent managed to cast Wrath of God, and that is the pink marker you see between the cannons and the rangers in the field there. It's kind of a weird outcome, actually. I think it was a 4v5. He threw 4 dice, I threw 5. He actually had the minimum cast value, which is a 13, and I failed to dispel it with 5 dice. So there you go. That comet does not come down immediately, but it is looming large. And that's pretty much where we ended up. Yeah, so then in my turn, things start to fall apart in a big way. I choose not to charge the Chaffing Goblins, figuring that he clearly isn't really ready or willing to fight my Kingsguard. I also was anticipating the comet not coming down in this turn, so I was just going to blast away at his Gargantula. Unfortunately, there was another charge actually. So the miners in the east charged the flank of the remaining Black Orcs, and they actually get away. This is a janky screenshot. Oh, there's a better screenshot actually. So they actually do manage to get away. I rolled exceedingly low on my 2 pursue rolls. It looks like he maybe rolled a 7 or an 8, and I rolled 2 way under that, which really limits the pressure that I can project on that side of the map. So a whole lot of bad things happen in this round. Right. What else is worth mentioning? So the charge goes off in my Magic phase. The comet inevitably comes down right when it needs to, and nukes. He rolled ridiculously high on all of his comet hits. I think he had 10 or more on 3 of the 4 targets that it hit. So he outright killed 2 cannons, killed all but I think 4 rangers. Might have been 5, causing them to flee. So they flee directly from the comet. This was a bone of contention in the chat during this game. All of you guys need to read the fucking book. It says right on the entry that it flees from the comet and not from the closest unit. So yeah, thanks to the Peanut Gallery for that. But basically the flee path for that took it through the anvil, through the warriors, through the Kingsguard, ultimately through the impassable terrain. And as a result of that, they ended up with 2 models left from dangerous terrain. So pretty rough. They're also now inhibiting the movement of those 2 units in the east. It's pretty much a nightmare scenario. Other than that, nothing really good happens on this turn. I move up to chaff his center unit. And that's basically it. Pretty much a nothing turn. Pretty miserable. I move forward 2 warrior units to prevent a charge on my main bunker. And that's pretty much what we're left with. The unit of Kingsguard in the center outstepped both units, so neither the center Iron Orc unit or the Feral Orc unit can see those Kingsguard, and I have a pretty fat flank charge on his general's unit should he do nothing. And if he does move, he's going to have to if he chooses to charge the warrior unit in front of him, he's going to have to redirect or sorry reform in such a way that he can face something. Otherwise, he's going to get pinned pretty badly. One of my win conditions for this was to be able to get a front and a flank charge with 2 Kingsguard units on that Ironwork unit. And it looks like I've set this up here, so with everything else bad going on, there is something good happening. The reason that is a win condition is because my Kingsguard will probably be able to give about 9, should be more than that actually. No, it would be about 9 strength 7 attacks against his general. His general's got high armor but no ward save, and only 3 wounds. So with those 9, I should hopefully get through to him and do, I hope, at least 3 wounds. So that is a goal, and he can't hide behind any challenges. So there you go. That's the turn. I really wish my cannon stuck around, actually. You know, he finally moved his Gargantula with the Wrath down. I guess banking on... It's just fucked up. Like, you know, you bank on a 4+, he banks on a 4+ and gets it. That's just the game sometimes. What I didn't really bank on is what happens next. So in his turn, he charges the warrior unit with his feral orcs, the one that was closest to the center. He rallies his fucking iron orcs, which are now in a conga facing the miners in the east. He charges the warrior unit in the center with his iron orcs. And with his goblins, and reforms as you see here. And he moves around the Kingsguard unit with his Great Green Idol. So what actually happened here, and was a pretty shocking result, was the Feral Orcs obliterated the warrior unit that they charged. No surprise there. However, what was a pretty massive surprise was the Kingsguard unit that was in hiding near that rock, preparing to charge his general's unit, failed a 9 rerollable panic check in range of the BSB, and fled through the rock. Took double DTs because they had taken a single wound from the Gargantula with the stupid fucking web launcher. And so they're left with 4 models down from, I guess it was 14. So at this point, I am pretty much out of tools. He's now pressuring my general's unit, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So that's that. The kids just, it's so this is such a frustrating game. In the east, the miners and the whole guardians charge the ironworks. I wasn't able to complete the wheel as I thought I could to get both into combat against the ironworks. I do end up winning that combat, but one ironwork fucking survives and runs away. And of course I roll shit to get after him again. In the west, the Kingsguard finally deal with those goblins, kill about 8 of them. They flee, and the Kingsguard test to restrain and do so, turning to face some flanks. I reform some warriors to provide some cover for the general's bunker. And in the center, I combo charge the... Oh, he fled them. So I combo charge both the Kingsguard and the warriors at his goblins. They fled. Fled through his unit, fled through the impassable, fled through my unit. And then I managed to make both flank charges onto his general's unit. Winning combat by something absurd, like 8. And ultimately just getting reformed to face, because that unit is stubborn if you can't deal with the Iron Orc Warboss. So this is what you end up with. Basically, he reformed Yeah, again, if I could have charged him in the front, reform would have been impossible. I feel like if that other Kingsguard unit was there, I pretty much get objective off that, and the game looks a whole lot different. But at this point, it's a foregone conclusion. You see he's charging with his Gargantula. I'll just run down how it ends. Of that combat, I wasn't able to spike his general in the front. The Iron Orcs, even after losing combat, just do too much, so he killed most of the remaining Kingsguard before I got to hit back. And the Gargantula pretty much deleted the warrior units, so I wasn't able to do anything there. That, of course, gives him objective, and at that point, the game is pretty much over. There's really no way. Having lost combat with both of those units, the Kingsguard unit got run down. I'm pretty much out of tools, so we called the game there. It ended up being, I think we called it a 16-4, which is really not what my team needed. I could have and should have come away with about a 15-5 here, I think. The lack of aggression on my part. I just didn't take the field. I didn't threaten him. He was actually really weak in the east, and I needed to apply pressure to that Iron Orc unit. I had the opportunity to do it, actually. It was the unit of warriors in the east was a vanguarding unit, and I could have actually got right in the face of those feral orcs and essentially turned the flank and just overrun him in the east. But I didn't do that because I was pussy. I basically was too afraid to face any of his units head on. And in fact, I'm not sure if my opponent even thought about this, but he's actually only running his orcs 5 wide, which is not optimal. Let's say suboptimal against 20 millimeter bases. So my entire army is 20 millimeter. If he runs 6 wide, he gets more attacks on me. I get the exact same number against him. And that would make his units quite a bit more formidable. He's hitting first in every case anyway, so it doesn't really harm him to do that. The other thing that really fucked me was not, I didn't expect him to approach through that west approach. I really expected at least his infantry to come through the center east between the two impassables, and that's why my rangers were placed as they were. I knew where he was going to be, though, like those rangers scout, but I still needed to box in my cannons to avoid insects. So, like, generally, the game went okay. I do feel like... No, the game did not go okay. I played really badly. I made some very poor decisions in terms of movement. I am okay with how I deployed. I know some people will argue that I should have played around Wrath of God completely, but you kind of can't do that. You can mitigate the totem, right? You can allow one totem in. That doesn't really hurt you with 2 cannons. Allow the totem, you blast it off, you devour it, and then he can never do that again. And then the only real threats to your cannons at that point are Wrath of God, which he needs probably 4 dice to cast on a 13. Or it's insects, which if he doesn't have line of sight to, he cannot cast at all. So really all I have to play around is Wrath of God, and I feel like, and if someone is a math PhD out there, please do this for me, but I feel like if you run the numbers, 5 dice to 4, him needing a 13, I should be able to do that, on a pretty high percentage, but I didn't, and it cost me pretty badly. The one thing I could have done differently is I could have moved my rangers a bit further. That wouldn't have really harmed me. In my first turn, in fact, I could have marched them straight forward their full 9, and it would have put a lot of pressure on him, actually. They don't do much against Iron Orcs, but I think one unit probably would have had line of sight against the Ferals, and Ferals don't really want to stand there taking a whole bunch of 4+ shots every turn. All in all, just really frustrating. I mean, the tournament in general went really well. I did end up as the top performing Dwarven Holds list, but I feel like I could have done a lot better. My first game was a 18-2, I think, and then I got a. I think I got a 16. I got an 18-2, a 15-5, and this was a 16-4. So not terrible. I I took this matchup expecting a win. So to come away not just with a loss, but with a pretty devastating loss was pretty frustrating. I I just think there's a lot I could have done better. You really need with this battle line to posture, to take control of the map, to force fights. If he's not charging, I can't really turn flanks, right? Like I can't really get a charge. If he's not going to come forward, there's not a whole lot I can do. And I just needed to take something on the chin. I needed to sack something so that I could get him out of position and make a play. His shit's all fearless, so if he's out of position, he's fucked. But you know, so it goes. That's the life of a Jimmy boy, and I hope you enjoyed this battle report. This actually ends a pretty long streak of victories. I don't quite know how many. I think it's close to 10 or 12 wins in a row, so it was bound to happen eventually. I just wish I had played better when it did occur, but that's life. So that's it for now. Stay Jimmy, boys. We'll see you next time. I will have some crippling rides battle reports coming soon, and I think I have one warm-up game in the can, so get ready for that. Till next time.